Hi, I'm Floyd Getchell, and welcome to the Unspoken Narrative. Today we are going to be covering a very controversial and pivotal point in American history, the Kennedy assassination. And we're going to get to the truth of the matter, which has been shrouded in history. It is an amazing topic, much researched. The truth has been there the entire time. It's actually buried in the Warren Commission report, which is amazing. There is a real unspoken hero in the Warren Commission report, and we'll get to that. The truth is in the Warren Commission report, and this doesn't mean I'm an agent of the conspiracy. There is a conspiracy there. It's an amazingly disappointing conspiracy. I've shared this information with friends. This isn't my own information. It is a ballistics expert came across this back in the 70s, and this information has been available since 1977 when he shared it. Let's back up a little bit, get to my credentials. I am a history scholar. I have my degree in history, and what I mean by history scholar, I research the heck out of history, and then I've made some amazing discoveries in history, like this one. I didn't discover this. Uh, I do have something to add to this. I have additional knowledge to add to this because there's a bit of um, something I know to add to what occurred on that day, 22 November 1963, that I don't think was available to the gentleman, um, Howard Donahue, the ballistics expert that figured all this out back in the 70s. I am a ballistics expert. I've actually designed cartridges. I do precision shooting. I'm also very good with a handgun. And so you can actually rely on the statements that I make with regard to firearms as we're running through this, and also some of the aspects that are involved in this conspiracy. You are going to be amazingly disappointed by this conspiracy. It is quite the letdown, trust me. So please be prepared. Okay, this is also going to cover why the government can't tell you why the government's been sitting on this, the information, and it is the reason it'll become obvious once I reveal the reason behind the conspiracy. It'll become so obvious you're going to go, oh, that's why they can't talk about it. It makes perfect sense now. Okay, it isn't, and it isn't some big global. It's It makes perfect sense. It's all going to fall into place. I guarantee you that. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be so underwhelmed. I've shared this with friends, and they get upset. It's like you're the bearer of bad news. It's like when you find out Santa Claus isn't real when you're a kid. Okay, it's that underwhelming. All right, you're just like, oh, there isn't some pretend dude that comes down and gives. It's actually just my parents. Okay, sorry if I spoiled that for some of you. Please don't let your kids watch this, or otherwise I just ruined Christmas. Anyway, um, so, and trust me, this conspiracy is not what you think. It's not the CIA. It's not the mafia. It's not some global. It's not the military-industrial complex. That's one of my favorites, but I'll explain that hopefully. Anyway, the guy who figured this all out is Howard Donahue. Information was originally published by Ralph Reppert in the Baltimore Sun in 1977. It was again written up in a novel form called Mortal Air: The Shot That Killed JFK. It was published in 1992, and that was Bonar, Menninger, and I apologize if I'm thrashing your names, gentlemen. Also, I draw information in the Warren Commission report. Key, key physical evidence. You cannot argue with physical evidence, because that is the key component to this whole thing, is actually in the key to this whole conspiracy. And there is a conspiracy here, just not what everybody thinks it is in the Warren Commission report. Okay, the key bit of knowledge is in the Warren Commission report. All right, And then also the Australia did a special in 2013, JFK, the smoking gun. That's where I don't know if I saw this in 2023, but it was darn close. And that's where I became aware of this. I saw that special, I believe, on the History Channel. And then there's another in 2023. Eric Ulis presented another additional theory, which actually makes a lot of sense the way things all played out, because there's a lot of question because there's a lot, why did the third shot go wide? Okay. And we'll answer that when we get there. All right. I'm going to go step by step like a legal brief to build my case. All right. And I want to do that. So everybody's going to question this. They're going to nitpick this because you just don't want to believe it. Okay. Like I said, this is underwhelming. It's sad. This conspiracy is underwhelming, sad that a pretty great president, this guy wanted to bring peace to the world. He wanted to de-escalate the Cold War. I mean, he started the Peace Corps. Nobody wants war. Okay, anybody that's seen war, well, I've seen war. I've got 3 tours of combat under my belt. JFK, I mean, he'd been up to his neck. He'd been out on the raggedy edge. I mean, he'd been running them PT boats and had PT 109 literally taken out from under him. Immediately lost 2 guys. Those boats, your crew, you run tight. Things 80 feet long. You're living right on top of each other. You get close. And that night, the boat gets run over by the destroyer. And he loses those 2 guys. I know he knew them well. Okay. You lose those guys, and then you're hanging out on the raggedy edge, no water, no food. They're eating coconuts. And if you've ever had coconuts, they give you the screaming runs. And so you're getting dehydrated on top of that. It's just terrible. And fortunately, went the extra mile, got those guys out of there, got them rescued. I don't know if he did get a Navy Cross for that. I'm not sure, but he went the extra mile to get his guy, take care of his guys. That's what you do as an officer. Okay. I love his attitude toward that. How'd you become a hero? I got my boat shot out from under me. Okay. Anyway, what happened relies on physical evidence. You cannot argue with physical evidence. Okay. And then the key component of that physical evidence is in the actual autopsy. And there's a lot of controversy about the autopsy, but that controversy is also part of the conspiracy. And we'll get into that. Okay. Main character here, Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald is an interesting individual in that I don't want to call him, you can't diagnose him. I've studied psychology. You might ask why I decided to be a history major, okay? And a history scholar. And the reason is because everything's history. You get to study everything because everything is history. So you can branch off and you can go study psychiatry. You can study the history of psychiatry. You can study Freud. You can study how Freud and Jung got into it. It's hilarious to read some of Jung's early stuff where he said Freud was just totally full of it. Anyway, so I can go study that because it's all history. Okay. Anyway, so Lee Harvey Oswald had a pretty crummy childhood, but he's always one of those characters throughout his life. He's always arguing with everybody, and he shows narcissistic tendencies. He's always thinking he's more important than he actually was. He's always in trouble in school, acting out. They interviewed his mother when he's in school, and that was really interesting to read about as I was studying for this. And they said his mother, there was no mother-child bond. And I have some theories that narcissism could be a genetic trait. It's anecdotal. I apologize. It's anecdotal that narcissism is a genetic trait that can be passed on, or it could be a behavioral trait. You have during the Civil War, there's a General McClellan, and he shows narcissistic traits, and so did his father. Anyway, I digress. The anyway, his mother never bonded with him, but Lee Harvey Oswald goes on. He gets out of school. He goes into the Marine Corps, and he has a pretty terrible career in the Marines. He has 2 unintentional discharges with his weapon. He fires one when he's out at a guard base. Why he loaded his weapon at any time on guard duty, I don't know, but he unintentionally discharges it. He gets in trouble for that. He also shoots himself, which I think is pretty funny. He has an unauthorized weapon in the barracks and he shoots himself. He manages to get out of the Marine Corps on a hardship discharge. And this is important because I've heard rumors about him and Governor Conley getting into it and having some letter exchange, but I've never been able to find any evidence on it. And maybe I just didn't research hard enough. But Governor Conley had seen Lee Harvey Oswald's name before. Lee Harvey Oswald, he's a communist. I guess he read some communist literature when he was 14, I guess Communist Manifesto or something, and he thought, hey, this is a great idea, because he obviously doesn't understand human nature. Humans will work hard enough as to not get in trouble. That's why communism and socialism don't work. Humans are involved. That's why those don't work. Anyway, so he reads this. He thinks he believed he's a communist, and communism is great. So he goes to Russia and he defects, kind of. He surrenders his passport at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, and he says, I want to renounce my citizenship. But he never fully goes through with it. He just surrenders his passport. He goes to, and he's expecting a parade. He said this. He said he was expecting a parade. He doesn't get a parade. And he gets a job in a factory. And he writes in his diary, I think he was an intermittent diarist, because there's not a lot of diary stuff available. But he says after a while, I'm making okay money, but there's no place to spend it except in the Union Hall. There's no bowling or clubs here. Well, of course, it's Soviet era Russia. What'd you expect, dude? The communist utopia that Marx wrote about. No, you need a capitalist economy to have cool clubs to go to. Anyway, joke's on you. So anyway, he gets fed up with it, but in the process of going into the embassy and denouncing, saying he wants to defect, and saying he wants to renounce his U.S. citizenship, his hardship honorable discharge gets changed to a less than honorable discharge, and it gets, guess who is the Secretary of the Navy, John Connally, who a couple of years later becomes the governor of Texas. He's the Secretary of the Navy for another year after that. This is 1960, I believe. 1961, I believe he becomes, maybe it's 62, I don't know their voting cycle there. He becomes governor of Texas. So, fast forward, 1961, Lee Harvey Oswald thinks that this being in Russia stinks. Yeah, March of 1961, he returns to the United States, but because now he has a less than honorable discharge, he's not entitled to VA benefits. So I'm trying to adjust this without messing it up. Okay. He has a less than honorable discharge. So all right, there we go. Nope, that didn't work. All right, there we are. Make my head big. Anyway, he has a less than honorable discharge now. So he can't have his VA benefits. So that's out, and I'm sure that upset him to no end. And so you also you get a job resume now. They will actually ask you on the job resume, if you're honorably discharged or not. You can't check that block anymore, and that it's a huge black mark. So I just read this earlier. He went from job to job, constantly described as being rude and arrogant, which is another um, argument that he was possibly displaying narcissistic type behavior. All right, let's go to his weapon selection. Okay, for his assassination attempt on President Kennedy, and we'll also get into the possibility that Kennedy, and I've already laid some of the groundwork for that Kennedy wasn't his only target in that car. There may also have not been just Governor Connolly as well. Okay, it was weapon selection. 6.5 Carcano. The rifle's considered one of the worst rifles ever used by any nation in combat ever. It was designed at the turn of the last century, like in actually, I think it's prior, I think it's late 1800s. Anyway, but the bullet itself is considered one of the most casualty producing, not lethal, but casualty producing. The 6.5 Carcano round. It creates great casualties. And when you're in a war, you don't want to actually kill people. You kill people, they become non-entities. They're just dead. Okay, and you can come back. Your casualty collection can come back and pick them up at a later date. If you wound somebody, they stress. First off, I'm running across the battlefield, and you shoot Bob next to me. He starts screaming. That's going to mess with me psychologically. If you kill Bob, Bob's dead. Bob's a non-entity now. I don't have to worry about Bob. But if you wound Bob and he starts screaming, I might get wounded too. That's going to mess with me psychologically. I may stop doing what I'm doing. I may stop shooting at the bad guys that just shot Bob. I may stop and hide because I don't want to get shot by Bob because Bob's screaming. That sounds pretty painful. I may want to stop and assist Bob, which takes me out of the fight. Maybe I'll grab, if I'm a retired Sergeant First Class, platoon sergeant, gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, chief in the Navy, and master chief in the Air Force, I think. Anyway, I might grab a couple guys, and I may tell some guys to grab him and haul him back if Bob's laying there screaming. Okay, if Bob's just laying there dead, we can keep moving on and come get him later. All right. So wounding, good. All right. So anyway, Carcano, Lee Harvey Oswald's rifle. The scope is a Japanese scope, and it's held on there with a piece of sheet metal. This is the worst way ever. It's not designed to have a scope on in the first place. It's got a couple of holes that were drilled into it, and set screws were put in it, and then screws were run into the scope. It's the worst way to mount a scope imaginable. Okay, it's just something that's just thrown together. Okay, to get something out of the door to, I think it came out of Chicago, and it came through, he mail ordered it. And he got that, and he thought it was an effective weapon because, hey, I am a former Marine, and I'm Lee Harvey Oswald, and I can take anything and be effective with it. Okay, and he wanted to make a statement. He's gone through life, and he's look at me, look at me, look at me. That's his whole life. I mean, he's Marine Corps career. They went back and they interviewed people that had worked with him in the Marine Corps. He was constantly in trouble for bucking rank, meaning he was arguing with his chain of command. Hey, I'm more important than I actually am. And he just thought he was a wonderful human being. And and a lot of people, like the women he tried to date in Russia, just thought he was sad. Anyway, and that's why they were dating him. All right, let's go. And we've kind of established he just thought he was more important. He was trying to make, and he wanted to make a statement, how I feel. He wanted to say, hey, look at me. I took a shot at the president. Because I honestly, weapon selection, And what he did, the shots Lee Harvey Oswald made that day are not kill shots. Okay, he's shooting center mass of the shots he made. All right, and we'll get into that and what happened with the conspiracy and his weapon selection. Okay, his weapon, he could have done things to the ammo he had available to him. He could have got some hunting rounds, but he shot the Full Metal Jacket military ammunition. They have that one bullet that we know was fired from his round, one bullet that was fired from his rifle that we know they found there in the hospital. And I'll kind of give you my theory on that bullet here in a moment. But and so the anyway, he could have done a better job. And the wounds that Lee Harvey Oswald inflicted on the president and Governor Conley were not lethal, obviously. Obviously for Governor Conley because he survived. Okay. Anyway, so 22 November 1963. The president, they get there. First off, they weren't supposed to be there, and that's somewhat important because the Secret Service detail there had been out partying hard. Okay, they're partying hard. They're hungover because they think they have time to recover because the president's not supposed to be there until late afternoon. President, for whatever reason, changes his itinerary. He doesn't want to go to Houston first. He wants to go to Dallas first for whatever reason. So they don't have the recovery time they thought they did. President shows up. They are not in a good state. Okay, the Secret Service detail. They are hungover. They don't feel good. They're chugging coffee, trying to but they are hungover. They're not 100%. The president wants to wave at the crowd, and there's a so they don't put the roof on the car, and they also don't. There's this thick plexiglass bubble that they can put on the back of that car. I've actually seen that car. It's the Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. I just saw it this summer. Anyway, but they rebuilt it, so it's not all messed up. Anyway, and he doesn't want that on there. He wants to. It's a warm day in the fall, and he wants to get out there. He wants to wave at the crowds and see the people. He gets out there, and he's driving along, and they turn onto the street, pulling away from the school book depository. They're pulling away. Now, the shot distances, and this is something people question, and as a firearms expert, I find this amusing. Okay, I did look this up. The muzzle velocity for the rifle is 2,300 feet per second. Okay, so that means in 1 second, that bullet can travel 2,300 feet. All right, the distance fired were 175 feet, 249 feet, 265 feet. All right. Frame of reference, the beloved American football field from goal line to goal line. Okay. Not end zone to end zone or the leading edge of the end zone. Okay. Technically, not the back of the end zone, the front. Goal line to goal line is 300 feet. So not even the whole length of the football field. Okay, because the whole length of a football field includes the back of the end zones. All right, from goal line to goal line is 300 feet, so not even that far. All right, to give you an example, minimum range that I shoot my high-powered rifles at, actually I shoot my handguns at 100 yards too, but that's another issue. I'm that good. Anyway, but I digress. Anyway, not far. Okay, not far at all for a rifle. All right. The other issue, he couldn't have shot that many rounds that fast. Okay, that's another issue that has caused the Warren Commission to be questioned that he fired these rounds in 5 seconds. Okay. First off, the time starts when he starts shooting. Okay. It doesn't start when they say go on the stopwatch. It starts when he's the initiator of this. Okay. It starts when Oswald starts shooting. Okay. Whoever, okay, go. No, that's not when it starts. The time starts when Oswald fired his first shot. He's the initiator of this event, not some dude on a stopwatch, okay? All right, the other thing that occurred recently is they digitized the Zapruder film, all right? He had 8.3 seconds from first round. He basically 4 seconds between shots. That's plenty of time for him to fire all 3 shots, all right? So anyway, the other question they have about the him shooting is the moving target. All right, that's why I did the muzzle velocity. All right, he's firing those distances, those short distances. The bullet's flying at 2,300 feet per second. Okay, 2,300 feet per second. Even at the extreme distance of 265 feet, that bullet is getting there in 1/10 of a second. He doesn't have to lead anything. There's no need for a lead time. Okay? All right. Lee Harvey Oswald was a Marine. He's trained to fire center of mass. That means the whole scope of the target, whatever you can see, like if you're going to shoot at me right now in the camera view here, you're going to fire right here because that's all of what you can see. You can see my shoulders and my head. So you're going to fire right about here, center of mass. Okay? That's what he could see of the president. Okay? Of the back of the car, the rear trunk of the car, the rear sill of the back deck of the car. That's what he could see. So he fires that first shot. It hits the president in the upper shoulder blade, and it passes through his neck, comes out his neck. All right. And the president slumps forward. Okay. This is important. Very important. Okay. This is also the Warren Commission's magic bullet. Okay. This has to be the magic bullet. All right. John Connally, governor, is sitting in front of the president. Okay. This bullet has to strike both gentlemen if the next bullet fired by Oswald hits the president in the head. Because if the next bullet fired actually hits the governor instead, then where did the bullet come from that strikes the president in the head? Okay? Does that make sense now? All right. So anyway, and the physics, the president now is slumped forward. He's been shot through the neck, basically. It's come out here. Survivable wound. Anybody, he would have survived. Okay. So the president slumps forward. The governor is actually able to move around. He turns right, he turns left at this point because he hasn't been hit yet. Gee, gang, really? So anyway, and he actually says, my God, they're going to kill us all. All right. Then Oswald fires again. Oh, excuse me. Let me back up slightly. First shot's fired. President slumps down. This is important because his body slumps all the way forward because he's been shot. Okay, this bullet passes through him, doesn't hit Connally at all. All right. And it's actually, I think, laying in the car, I believe. I think this is the bullet that the Secret Service picked up and then laid in the gurney in the hospital. Okay, that would make the most sense because it doesn't hit anything in the president that would cause it to deform or anything like that. And it hits in the car. Well, the car is bulletproof inside and out, so it hit in the car and wouldn't go anywhere because it's inside the bulletproof thing now, all right, or whatever armor they have in the car. So it's going to be in the car, and then, hey, we got a perfect bullet to add evidence against Oswald or whomever. They don't know who Oswald is yet, but they have a perfect bullet, and hey, we can plant this evidence to add to the case, and I'll get to that later. So anyway, first bullet goes through. Secret Service react. The one agent runs up, jumps on the back of the car, and or he's moving to do that. One of the agents in the back whips out an M16, okay, in the trail car, and he is not trained on the M16, and he is looking. He's looking at the president, and he's looking around for the shooter, but he's looking at what's called your principal. The principal's whoever you're guarding. And he, unfortunately, puts the weapon on semi, and his finger wanders onto the trigger. Okay. Oswald fires his second shot at Governor Colen. Okay. And this startles the agent hungover who has his finger on the trigger of an M16. And the weapon happens to be oriented on the president. And he fires. Bang. I'm going to show you something here. Okay, this is my own AR-15, which is a semi-automatic civilian version of the M16, just like the one that was carried by the Secret Service in the trail car. Right, you will see my finger is what's called posted above the where the trigger goes, okay? Just like that, okay? They didn't do this back in the day. I was in the Army Rangers back in the 80s, and we didn't do this back then, okay? I didn't become aware of this technique until the early 90s when I was a range master at an indoor gun range. When I left the Army in the late 80s, we were not doing this yet, okay? And I just became aware of it. I probably came out of the great pistoleros at the time, and were the FBI, the Texas Rangers, and then the U.S. Border Patrol. Those were where all the great pistol techniques and stuff like that were coming out of in the 80s, because those were the Border Patrol was the ones doing gunfights, and the Texas Rangers, one riot, one ranger. That's where that expression came from, because they were getting in real gunfights with the banditos on the border and stuff like that. And then the FBI used to be a great bunch of gunfighters, and then you had the Pratt and Maddox shootout in Dade County, Florida, and it showed the FBI that they needed some more training. Anyway, because those guys, that's why that shooting went the way it did there in Dade County with the FBI, is because those two guys trained. Okay, those two bad guys trained a lot, obviously more than the FBI agents. Anyway, training beats everything. Don't buy expensive guns, go get expensive training. Anyway, posting your finger. Okay, the FBI agent had his finger on the trigger, and the startle reflex is what I'm getting to here. Startle reflex. I've been told you can generate 50 pounds of energy in a startle. You're surprised and you clench up. Okay, startle reflex. Okay. Standard M16A1 at the time. Actually might have been called, I mean, this is 1963. M16 hasn't been adopted by the military yet. It still may have been an AR-15 at the time. It was a machine gun. Thank God he didn't have it on freaking full auto. All right. But M16 M16 at the time, and that also has to do with the ammunition in it. It wouldn't have been full metal jacket ammunition. It would have been a probably a 55 grain spire point, which means it was lead exposed tip, so it would have hit the back of the president's head and just fragmented. It would have hit his skull and just fragmented out, and obviously made a catastrophic wound as shown in the Zapruder film. And we'll get to that here now. Anyway, so it's Oswald's second shot, the unfortunate unintentional discharge of the Secret Service round, and the reason, okay, you have the president is slumped forward, okay, so his body is extended all the way forward, okay. he gets hit in the back of the head. He can't go forward any further. All right. So but that energy, he has additional energy going forward. So it's like a spring. That energy has to go somewhere. So he recoils backward when he's hit. Okay. They've done numerous experiments on this, and what happens. They've even done it with the 6.5 Carcano round being hit in the back of the head on cadavers and dummies, and the head pops backward. And that's also why you have, as it's popping backward, the skull cap comes apart, and because it's attached, it pops backward onto the trunk of the vehicle. Okay. And everybody's like, oh, he was shot in the front, and that's why it came apart like it did, because he was shot in the front. Well, if he was shot in the front, you would see a small hole like this, and you would have seen like that. Okay, you would have seen it like that. You wouldn't have seen the round go in the back of his skull, and this explosive, as that round, probably a 55 grain spire point, popping out the front. And it technically, at the time, the rounds that the AR-15 M16 was shooting at the time were 222 Magnum rounds. So it was probably a 55 grain spire point bullet. Horrid accident, just absolutely terrible. Okay. Anyway, so that's why that's the second shot. Okay. That's why the first bullet, the Warren Commission's magic bullet, has to hit both. The one through the president's throat has to hit Governor Connolly too, because if the second bullet just hits Governor Connolly, what the hell is that bullet through the president's head? Where'd that come from? All right. Okay. So anyway, sorry, working off notes here because I don't have a production crew. Anyway, the third shot. Okay, we are now 8 seconds into this travesty. Excuse me, back up. Okay, so now we got the Secret Service agent is on the bumper. The skull fragments of the president are on the bumper. Jackie has crawled onto the back of the car. Oswald's fired his second shot. The Secret Service agent is on the rear deck of the car. The governor has said, my God, they are going to kill us all. All right, the president's dead at this point. And the poor woman is there picking up pieces of her husband's skull. And it's just so awful. Okay. She is scrambling back into her seat. And in 2023, Eric Ulis posed the idea that Jackie was the third target. And the Warren Commission said the third shot went wide left of the vehicle. And the Warren Commission, based on that, actually supports Eric Ulis's theory. Because why the hell? He's just put 2 shots within probably 2 feet of each other, right on target, and all of a sudden he flings one way left. The only thing that really makes sense, and we're using Occam's razor, and if you don't know, Occam is actually a town in France. That's where that expression comes from. It's not a person, it's a town in France, and they had a bunch of monks, and they're going through the Bible. And if you've ever really studied the Bible, it's full of a lot of contradictions, and these monks were trying to wade their way. And this is before they came up with the King James version of the Bible. I think this is in year 1000, or maybe it's before that. And these monks are trying to wade through the contradiction of the Bible. And they come up with the idea of whichever idea needs the least amount of explanation is the most likely idea. And that's where Occam's razor comes from. Okay. So anyway, and Oswald puts these 2 rounds right there, and he's not firing that far away, gang. Okay. 200 and I think 45 yards or feet. Okay. Not even a whole football field away. All right. Believe me, I can hit a person with a Glock at that distance. All right. But he's got a rifle with a crummy scope on it, and he's already put 2 rounds into people. All right. He flings a round wide left at a moving target in a pink dress. That actually makes sense. Okay. And also, some of the frag off that round hit a person back in that direction. All right. So flinging around off to the left supports actually Eric Ulis's theory that Jackie was the 3rd target. And the idea, Lee Harvey Oswald, the arrogant individual he was, 1 round, 1 target. I'm a Marine. I'm awesome. I'm making a statement. 1 in the president, 1 in the governor, 1 in Jackie. Makes perfect sense. And so Mr. Ulis's theory makes perfect sense here. So the Secret Service has accidentally killed the president. Cue the conspiracy. Step 1, you need to control the crime scene. Now let me back up here. I told you so. You're going to be disappointed. I can just hear everybody just like, really? That's the conspiracy? Sadly, yes. And we're going to dig into it more and prepare for greater levels of disappointment as I continue. Okay, step 1, you need to control the crime scene. Step 2, you need to pile on evidence to any suspect that present themselves. Okay, the found bullet in the car. I honestly think that first round that he fired went through the president, didn't hit anything else, landed in probably landed at the feet of the driver. Okay. And then the next part in controlling the crime scene, you need to get control of the president's body. They get the vice president. This is standard protocol. They evacuate the vice president to Air Force One. Standard protocol, national security. Nobody's going to question that. Okay. Okay. The vice president is not going to leave without the widow. And he actually makes an extremely sexist statement. He says, I'm not going to leave that beautiful, something to the effect of that beautiful, I'm not going to leave behind a beautiful widow, I think is what he said, something to that effect. The guy was total misogynist, and apparently there is rumor that I find it ironic given his name, President Johnson, that he used to expose his Johnson quite often, apparently. Hey, you want to see this? You know, and he would sit at the that president's desk, the one that's made out of a ship or something like that. Apparently he would sit there with his trousers down. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, then Jackie, she gets on Air Force One. They actually do the swearing in right there with Air Force One sitting on the ground with that famous picture of her standing there. She's still got blood on that pink dress. Whew. Wow, what a day, huh? So anyway, she says she's not leaving without the body of her husband. Okay. And the Secret Service, of course, they go secure the body. And they're like, really? You're going to argue with, you know, our glamorous first lady? And they reluctantly turn over the body, which is a violation of the sovereignty of the state of Texas, and on and on and on. But the freaking Secret Service is going, score! We control the body of the guy we just shot. Okay. They get it out, and they get it. They fly to Washington, D.C. They get it to Bethesda, Maryland, which is Bethesda's Naval Hospital there in Maryland. And they get Commander Humes. Commander Humes is our hero in this tragic story, if it can have a hero. All right. If you've ever looked at this at all, you know that the Secret Service constantly constantly interferes with the autopsy. They're doing part of the exam on the autopsy. The Secret Service is saying, stop, you need to go back to whatever this is or that is, and stop what you're doing. Is if they are thinking that their line of inquiry as they're doing the autopsy is going to expose them or something like that. We know that they did tell them to move the point of entry as far as the 5.56 round is concerned, from the lower on the skull to upper on the skull, because if the wound had occurred lower on the skull, there's no way from the angle of the 6th floor of the school book depository they could have fired. Lee Harvey Oswald couldn't have fired at that angle. Okay, here is the irrefutable physical evidence that Commander Humes provided us. Okay, the Warren Commission report, page 541. Okay, and I'm going to do something here. Wikipedia drives me nuts. Okay, they remove and add information all the time. Drives me absolutely crazy. 2 weeks ago, when I looked at this on the entry for mortal error, they actually had the Warren Commission report, page 541, on the page. All right, and you go in there. It's actually Appendix. It's not listed as page 541 on the Warren Commission report. It's actually Appendix 9, page 4. All right. Anyway, Wikipedia had that on there as part of the entry in mortal error. Okay. I went back there Wednesday. Today's Friday, March 7th, and they removed it. They had removed that from mortal error, and I think it's because the President Trump keeps saying, and Pam Bondi keeps saying that they're going to release information on this. And honestly, I'll get to it in a minute here, and if you haven't figured it out yet, they can't. They may not be able to. Okay, and I'll explain that towards the end here. Anyway, on page 4 of the autopsy, Commander Humes enters that the entry wound, regardless of the location, doesn't matter the location, does not matter at all. Okay, the hole is 6 millimeters by 15 millimeters. How big's our bullet? Okay, how big is Lee Harvey Oswald's gun? It's 6.5 millimeters. All right, a 6.5 millimeter bullet can ever, defies the laws of physics, fit through a 6 millimeter hole. Ever. Okay? Doesn't work. Okay? The hole is measured at its widest point, and they don't round down. Okay? Doesn't matter if the brain's missing. Doesn't matter when the brain is examined. Doesn't matter if they examined another brain. Dr. Humes, Dr. Humes examined this brain, or examined the skull, and he measured the hole at 6 millimeters by 15 millimeters. Okay? And if it had been 6.5, he would have said 7 millimeters. All right? And I think it's amusing because Americans, we don't use millimeters. People don't recognize millimeters. And the Secret Service agents that were in there bullying them around, trying to cover their rear ends, don't know millimeters. Those guys don't know millimeters. I have no idea the background of those guys, but they somehow missed this and going over it. And the Warren Commission dudes don't know millimeters, and they missed that Commander Humes got him. And that guy, yes, he said that Lee Hart, he said it was, he could sleep well knowing that in his autopsy report, he told the truth. He told the truth that it was a 6 millimeter hole, and he could say yes to all these questions, but in the autopsy report, he told the truth. Okay? because people asked him, numerous people asked him, and were you truthful? Yes, I was truthful, and he was. He was completely truthful this whole time. Okay, if it had been a 6.5 millimeter hole, he would have said 7 millimeters in there. Okay, there is your irrefutable physical evidence. You can't argue with that. William Law, a doctor, later spoke with him in the 70s, and he said that Dr. Humes, I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing his name, may he rest in peace, because he is our hero in all this, that he was a student of Dr. Humes. He said he was a man that used subtle language to pass information along. They didn't question him, Dr. Humes, if he would do something like this, trickery with words or something like that. But he was specifically, they asked Dr. Law if he would use subtle language to convey sub rosa, under the surface messages like this. And yeah, he would, but they didn't ask him specifically like that. They said he used subtle languages to convey, or subtle language to convey information. So this is well within Dr. Hume's wheelhouse. One thing they did say, all the Dr. Humes and all the pathologists said there was no way that they could reconcile the bullet path with the wound channel. Okay, they couldn't say the skull they had sitting in front of them, the bullet path from the 6th floor down to where it passed through the president's skull. They just could not reconcile that. That is one thing they willingly admitted. So basically they're saying there's no way that bullet could have come from the 6th floor of the school book depository. All right. All right. No one, this is the reason why they haven't released this information. Nobody under Secret Service protection can tell the truth about this. Okay? Secret Service screwed up. On 22 November 1963, the Secret Service made the hugest mistake in modern history. Honestly, you killed your principal. That's what the person you're guarding is called, the principal. I've done some bodyguard work. And so that's why they, hey, I'm going to release this information. Some president or somebody else who's under Secret Service protection says, I'm going to release this. All right. And this information has been out, but it's never been out from official sources. And everybody that is an official source goes to release this. And then they look at it and they go, well, if I say something, then the Secret Service is going to be on their ass. They're going to definitely send in the C or D or, or B or E or D team to guard me, or just turn a blind eye, because I'm going to tell on them. They effed up. This is the biggest F up in modern history as far as protection details goes. Okay, they killed their principal, and what a mess up. That's why they, oh, I'm going to release the stuff on the Kennedy assassination, and then and then the other assassination, you have Dr. Martin Luther King. Okay, honestly, a lot of it points toward the FBI doing it. J. Edgar Hoover was so afraid of freaking black people. He was a racist, big time racist. And you just look at that and all the circumstantial evidence that they convicted that guy on. You're just like, there's evidence that that guy wasn't even in town when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. Anyway, and then what was the other one? Oh, his brother, was it Jack Kennedy? Him being killed by Sirhan. Sirhan, honestly, I don't think there's a conspiracy there. He wasn't under Secret Service, and him being hit with an extra bullet. People being in gunfights, people freak out, and pull their guns out. They don't aim. They just start flinging lead in different directions. I've seen, when I was in the military, I know of several gunfights where hundreds of rounds were discharged and no one was hit. I had a student when I was a civilian instructor one time. 27 rounds were discharged inside a police cruiser and no one was hit. Okay, guys? So everybody freaking out about Sirhan, and that, I honestly think that guy is just psycho. Sometimes they're just psychos. Okay. Oh, that reminds me. Wanted to talk about Lee Harvey Oswald getting killed as well. Okay. Everybody, um, everybody thinks that's a conspiracy to tie off an end. Sometimes some people just get so angry. Apparently, Jack Ruby just thought President Kennedy was the coolest dude ever, and he was just so freaking angry. And Jack Ruby knew all the cops in the area. He used to hang out at the police station apparently, and the police used to hang out at Jack Ruby's strip club. Imagine. So anyway, him walking into the police station was not a big deal, and he was so upset. I feel he was just so upset. Yeah, he had mafia ties. So big deal. I've known people in the mafia too. Whatever. And Jack Ruby just got so upset that he went and shot. How dare you kill the guy I revere so much? And he just was so angry. After September 11th happened, the next day, September 12th, I was in Mesa, Arizona. I was active duty National Guard, and just down the street from us at the Shell station, this angry man, ignorant man, walked into the Shell station and shot a Sikh man. Sikhs are not Muslims. This guy had displaced his anger so bad, he shot this poor gentleman who wasn't even a Muslim. He just was different. And this guy went in there and murdered him. And he turned himself in the next day, and I hope he's still in prison, because that was a long time ago. And it was just awful. Sikhs kill Muslims. They don't like Muslims. Okay. So I mean, it was just, and then you have the big mass shooting in Vegas. Hillary Clinton loses the election, and that guy was just so angry that he shoots all the people that he thinks voted to put President Trump in office the first time. Okay. People just get angry. Not a big conspiracy. But that brings us to all the other conspiracy theories. They fall into two categories. A bunch of them were started by the KGB. Got to remember, KGB, or the Russians, just got punched in the nose over the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, they had missiles just off our shore, 90 miles off the United States. So they didn't need long-range missiles. They had a whole bunch of short-range nuclear missiles in Cuba. All right. Then our president made them take them away. But they're trying to destabilize our government. They don't understand. Like the Russian Soviet system, the leader goes away and it destabilizes our government until the Soviet means coming together. So if the Soviet gets really unstable, when the strongman like Stalin or Lenin, Brezhnev was pretty good too. If they're taken out, Khrushchev's great. The head guy gets taken out, their government gets really stable. They don't understand how our government could still function with a president. We have three branches of government. So, in the way our secession system works, not a big deal if a president gets taken out. So they're trying to destabilize our government. There was a newspaper, they actually found out, I think it was in Indiana, the newspaper, and most of the conspiracy theories, four major conspiracy theories came out of, they've tracked them down, they all came out of there. The other place for conspiracy theories are people trying to make money, which is sad. And the Secret Service was like, yay, the more conspiracy theories out there, no matter how ridiculous, take the heat off us. Yay for conspiracy theories. Because, they were the culpable They were the ones that did it, but the more conspiracy theories you have, the less heat is on them. The we can go through some of them real quick here. The industrial military complex theory. Oh, that would be the President Kennedy wasn't going to do anything in Vietnam. Okay. Now that, and then Johnson did stuff in Vietnam. Okay. But then he pretty much resigned because, or wasn't going to run for president in '68, which he could have done, and a lot of that was over how things were terrible in Vietnam. So, sort that all out in your heads. But change in policy is normal in change of presidency. Okay, so that's not a valid conspiracy theory to remove a president in a traumatic way. It would just be like, say, Kennedy had really poor health. If you do any research on Kennedy's health, they say he had an autoimmune deficiency. There was one doctor that said in '47 when he did a checkup with him that he didn't think he was going to live to be another year, for another year because he had such a terrible autoimmune deficiency. So, and Kennedy shot back, and I'll bet you all live another 10. But he had terrible health. But say he didn't, because of his health, he didn't run for re-election in '64. So there would have been a change of presidency and a change of policy. Okay, you have a traumatic change of presidency, so you're going to have a change of policy. That's not a reason to have okay. There's the foundation of your industrial military industry conspiracy. You have a change of presidency. Mafia doing it because his brother was going after the mafia. Well, the mafia had free reign because J. Edgar Hoover wasn't going to do anything. People talk about corruption in the FBI now. The FBI has actually been pretty corrupt since its inception because J. Edgar Hoover, who really gave teeth to the FBI, would never go after organized crime. One of the theories is that the organized crime knew that J. Edgar Hoover was a cross-dressing homosexual. I've never done any research on it. I just kind of snicker because I think it's kind of funny if it's true. If they had that kind of leverage on J. Edgar Hoover, it all kind of makes sense because there's numerous times everybody knew the mafia was there. Okay, and organized crime was there, and J. Edgar Hoover, I mean, he sat before Congress numerous times and just said there's no organized crime, so they must have had something on him or that he was on the take. Okay, so Cuba, one of the conspiracy theories is we sent hit teams to take out Castro, and Castro turned them on Kennedy. I believe Castro immediately denied any involvement in his assassination because he didn't want to get invaded or nuked because, well, I mean, we just told the Russians to back off with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, that was still fresh in everybody's mind. We just, surrounded this freaking island and fended off Russian battleships. That's not going to happen. Then there are a bunch of there are people that trying to make money doing crazy movies and things like that, and all these different other conspiracy theories, and they're just people trying to make money. But the mafia paid off the Secret Service to kill the president. No, it's a horrid accident. That's the terrible thing. It was an accident, and the conspiracy is to cover up the accident. And that's the travesty of this whole thing. That's the sad, sad thing. Additional supporting evidence. Okay, you have numerous people that were in the rest of the motorcade that smelled gun smoke. Okay, You fire a rifle on the grassy knoll, you're not going to smell gun smoke down on the street. You could fire a 50 caliber rifle up on the grassy knoll, and that gun smoke isn't going to get down to the road. Okay? Not going to happen. But if you fire a rifle in the motorcade, you're definitely going to smell gun smoke. The other evidence is the dictaphone recording that was taken that records 4 shots and the 2 shots simultaneously when Oswald fires his second shot. Okay, that's amazing supporting evidence. The problem is they've gone back to test it. They don't know the point of origin of the recording. Okay, they don't know who hot mic'd. They don't know where it was from, and the only acoustic that they don't know the point of origin, where it was recorded from, and the only way they've tried to verify it is they've tried to do the second acoustic test if a shot was taken from the grassy knoll. They've never done a test of the trail car, a shot fired from the trail car. Okay. The other arguments against Oswald doing it is time sequencing. I think these are absolutely hilarious. Okay. We all have our phones nowadays, all right? And our phones are all synced off an atomic clock. I don't even think an atomic clock was invented back then, gang. Okay? People's watches were off on average by 15 minutes. Okay? So for someone to say that Lee Harvey Oswald couldn't get from point A to point B based on somebody's pocket watch or this watch or that watch or whatever watch or this, that, and the other thing, it doesn't work. It's terrible evidence. Eyewitness accounts of this, that, and the other thing. Ask any police officer out there. The eyewitness accounts are terrible. That's why traffic cams and body cams are awesome. Okay, because actual footage. That's why the Zapruder film is important. Apparently, there's some film in Germany that some German tourist has that needs to come to light because apparently it records the whole thing, but nobody knows where that is. I'm sure the Secret Service shot somebody over there to destroy it or buy it or something like that. Anyway, but anyway, the dictaphone records 4 shots and 2 shots almost simultaneously with the second shot. Okay, and that supports our startle reflex shot from the Secret Service trail car. All right, the aftermath. What did this all get us? It got us in we have the Gun Control Act in 1968, and what that did, it did a few things as far as gun control is concerned. If you haven't figured out the big "Don't Tread on Me," I am a huge Second Amendment supporter. Okay. And the Gun Control Act of 1968 is a good thing. You can't mail order guns. So if you ever hear anybody, I bought it online. How'd you get your gun? I got it online. It still has to go through a local gun store. You still have to have a background check performed, and you still have to perform fill out a 4473. That is a piece of paperwork that ask you a bunch of questions. All right. And this is important because, and then they call the local law enforcement or state law enforcement, excuse me, and and they have a call line, and then they pull up the FBI background check. Okay, good stuff. Except it doesn't check if you're mentally ill. I'm in Arizona here, our own Gabby Gifford suffered from this because the gentleman that shot her was mentally ill. But we have to protect the rights. The rights of the mentally ill apparently supersede our own public safety. We have to protect their right to privacy over our own public safety, and she suffered as a result of that, okay? Because their rights to privacy supersede our right to safety somehow, okay? Am I being sarcastic enough for you? All right. Anyway, that's one problem with that. The so anyway, the and yeah, the reason you haven't heard anything out of her and her husband, Mark Kelly, who's our senator or rep, I don't know what he is. The reason you haven't heard any gun control stuff out of them lately is because they made some gun control comment. And about 3 weeks later, they were seen on the gun range down there by Tucson with an AR-15 in their hand, flinging rounds down range. And they got a picture of that and posted it online because they're big, giant, freaking hypocrites. Okay. Second Amendment. The reason the Second Amendment is because it's the only thing that protects us from our tyrannical government. You ever notice these horrendous things that happen? Waco, Ruby Ridge, the thing in north of Vegas, what was that? The Bundy Ranch incident. Democrats are in office. Democrats don't like you to have rights, okay? And the rights they do support squish other people's rights, okay? Right for men to participate in women's sports. That's the rights of men to squish women's rights, okay? The rights of illegal aliens. Illegal aliens shouldn't have any rights in the United States. They don't, okay? But they want their rights to supersede your rights as individual citizens. And what it comes down to, the Democratic Party is a party of slavery, okay? They're the ones that wanted to keep slaves back in the 1800s, okay? And now these illegal immigrants are their new slaves, and they want to maintain their new slavery. I said it. The unspoken narrative, okay? That's why we came up with that name. That and some of the other names I wanted to use were already taken. Anyway, that is our unspoken narrative. My name is Floyd Getchell, and you guys have an outstanding day. I hope you learned something, and I hope this didn't upset you too much. It's the truth, backed by physical evidence, and I've done this because other people can't. You guys have a great day.